The law office smelled like old leather and disappointment. My siblings, Mark, Sandra, and Kyle, were already seated when I arrived, their eyes calculating the value of everything in the room, including me. "Nice of you to show up, Natalie," Mark said, not looking up from his phone. "Some of us have real jobs to get back to." I slid into the last empty chair, ignoring the jab. As the youngest and the only one who had stayed to care for Dad during his final years, I'd gotten used to their dismissive attitude. Artist, dreamer, daddy's girl. I'd heard it all. Mr. Garrison, Dad's attorney, cleared his throat. "Now that everyone's here, we can begin. Your father, Dr. Leonard Nash, was very specific about the distribution of his assets." Finally, Sandra muttered, "Maybe we can sell that house and split the money like normal people." As I was saying, Mr. Garrison continued, pulling out a thick folder. Dr. Nash left detailed instructions. "To Mark Nash, I leave my 1967 Mustang and a vacation cabin in Tahoe." Mark smiled, already calculating resale values. "To Sandra Nash Williams, I leave my house at 447 Oakwood Drive and all its contents, except those specifically mentioned elsewhere." Sandra's grin widened. The house was worth at least $800,000 in the current market. "To Kyle Nash, I leave my investment portfolio and savings accounts, totaling approximately $500,000. Kyle tried to look solemn, but I caught him fist-bumping Mark under the table. "And to Natalie Nash," Mr. Garrison paused, pulling out a worn leather folder. "I leave my patent portfolio and all associated documentation." The silence lasted about 3 seconds before the laughter started. "Patents?" Mark wheezed. "She gets Dad's crazy inventor phase. Those worthless papers he was always scribbling on." Sandra added, tears streaming down her face. "Oh my God, Natalie, enjoy your stupid papers." Kyle was lacking too hard to speak, just pointing at the folder like it was the punchline to the world's best joke. Mr. Garrison waited for them to calm down. "There's also a letter. For Natalie specifically." With shaking hands, I opened the envelope. "My dearest Natalie, you're the only one who ever listened when I talked about my work. The only one who understood that value isn't always visible on the surface. These patents represent 40 years of research into haptic feedback systems and touchscreen interfaces. Most companies ignored them, said the technology wasn't practical. But you believed in impractical things. You always have. Be patient. The world has a way of catching up to ideas that were ahead of their time. Love, Dad." Big Yes check patent number 5,832,419 first. I had a feeling about that one. "Haptic feedback," I whispered. "Dad's old touchscreen obsession," Mark explained, still chuckling. He spent the entire 90s trying to convince companies that people would want to feel their screens. What a waste. "While we were in school, he was playing with electronics," Sandra added. "Now Natalie gets to keep all his failed dreams. Perfect match, really." I clutched the folder to my chest. Dad spent decades on this research. "And what did it get him?" Kyle asked. "A professor's salary and a garage full of prototypes nobody wanted. Face it, Nat, you got the consolation prize." They left quickly after that, eager to claim their real prizes. Mark drove off in the Mustang. Sandra called a moving company from the parking lot. Kyle was already on the phone with financial advisors. I sat in my 10-year-old Honda, carefully paging through Dad's patents. Dozens of them, each meticulously documented. Haptic feedback systems, pressure-sensitive interfaces, multi-touch recognition algorithms. Terms I barely understood but recognized from his late-night explanations. Patent number 5,832,419. Method and apparatus for providing tactile feedback in touch-sensitive interfaces. Filed in 1997. Granted in 1998. That night, I spread everything across my apartment floor. Dad had been thorough, not just patents but correspondence, prototype sketches, even rejection letters from major tech companies. "Technology not commercially viable," one read. "No market for tactile screens," said another. "Consumers prefer physical buttons," a third explained. All dated from the late 90s and early 2000s, before smartphones, before tablets, before the entire world became touchscreen dependent. 2 weeks passed. I barely scratched the surface of understanding Dad's work when the call came. Ms. Nash, this is Rebecca Chen from the legal department at Apple Incorporated. We need to discuss your father's patent portfolio. My heart stopped. Apple? As in? Yes, ma'am. We've been conducting a comprehensive patent review, and it appears several of our current technologies may utilize innovations covered by your father's patents. Specifically, patent number 5,832,419. I sank onto my couch. The haptic feedback patent. Among others, Ms. Nash, our initial assessment suggests we've been using technologies covered by at least 12 of Dr. Nash's patents for the past decade. We'd like to discuss a licensing agreement. Retroactively. Retroactively. My voice came out as a squeak. Yes. Are you familiar with patent law? Not really. My father was the inventor. I just inherited these. I see. May I suggest you obtain legal representation? This is a substantial matter. Our preliminary calculations for retroactive licensing fees are significant. How significant? Ms. Nash, I can't give exact figures without formal negotiations, but given the scope of use across our product lines for the past 10 years, we're prepared to offer a settlement in the range of $15 million. As a starting point, the phone slipped from my hand. $50 million. As a starting point. I hired a patent attorney the next day. David Sung came highly recommended and nearly choked on his coffee when he reviewed Dad's portfolio. Your father was a genius, he said, flipping through pages. These patents, they're foundational. Not just Apple, Samsung, Google, Microsoft. Basically every company making touchscreen devices could be using his innovations. But they all rejected him 20 years ago. Because they couldn't see the future. Your father could. He patented the solutions before anyone knew there would be problems to solve. The negotiations took months. Apple was just the beginning. Once word got out that Dr. Leonard Nash's patents were being enforced, every major tech company came knocking. They'd all been using his innovations buried in their devices, thinking the patents were forgotten or irrelevant. David was brilliant. He didn't just negotiate licensing fees. He structured ongoing royalties. Every smartphone, every tablet, every device with haptic feedback would generate income. Your father didn't just leave you patents, David explained. He left you a piece of every touchscreen device sold for the next decade. The numbers were staggering. The retroactive fees alone topped $200 million across all companies. The projected royalties were even higher. I was sitting in my apartment, staring at a bank balance I couldn't comprehend when Mark called. Hey, Nat. Weird question, but have you heard from any tech companies about Dad's old papers? Why? I kept my voice neutral. Some lawyer called asking about patent transfers. Said there might be value in Dad's research. I told him you got all that junk, but if there's money involved, we should split it. Family is family, right? What happened to enjoying my stupid papers? Come on, don't be like that. We all know Dad would want us to share everything equally. Like how you shared the house, the car, and the money. That's different. Those were specifically left to us. And the patents were specifically left to me. But you don't even understand that technical stuff. Look, if there's a few $1,000s in it, you should share. We're family. A few thousand? I couldn't help but laugh. Mark, Apple alone paid me $50 million in retroactive licensing fees. The silence was beautiful. $50 million? His voice cracked. And that's just Apple. Samsung was $60 million. Google, $45 million. Microsoft is still calculating. Oh, and the ongoing royalties. About $10 million a year. Conservative estimate. You're lying. Patent number 5,832,419. Look it up. Dad invented the haptic feedback system used in every iPhone ever made, plus about 50 other innovations you laughed at. But we thought. You thought Dad was a failure tinkering with worthless ideas. You took the house and the cars and the bank accounts because those had obvious value. You laughed at me for getting worthless papers. Natalie, please. We didn't know. How could we know? You could have listened. Just once, you could have listened when Dad talked about his work. You could have visited during his final year instead of waiting for him to die. You could have been his children instead of vultures circling his estate. That's not fair. Fair? Let me tell you what's fair. Dad spent 40 years being rejected, mocked, ignored. He kept working because he believed in his ideas. He left them to the only person who believed in him. That's fair. We'll contest the will. Go ahead. I have excellent lawyers now. They'll love to discuss how you three divided everything of value and left me with what you called worthless papers. Very clear evidence that you got exactly what you wanted. The call ended with Mark screaming about fairness and family. Sandra and Kyle weren't far behind, alternating between threats and sob stories. But Mr. Garrison had been clear. The will was ironclad. They'd taken the obvious prizes. I'd taken the leap of faith. I bought a house with my first royalty check. Nothing crazy. Dad would have hated ostentation. But I made sure it had a workshop, a proper one with equipment he could only dream of. The second check went to establishing the Dr. Leonard Nash Innovation Grant for unconventional inventors. People working on ideas everyone else calls crazy. Dad would have liked that. My siblings still send messages. Mark had to sell the Mustang when his business failed. Sandra lost the house in her divorce. Kyle's investments tanked in a market downturn. They hint about their struggles, mention their kids' college funds, remind me about family obligations. I remind them about stupid papers. The workshop is my favorite room. I'm learning slowly to understand Dad's work. His notebooks fill the shelves, not just the patents but the ideas he never filed, the dreams still waiting for their time. Sometimes I imagine him here, explaining excitedly about pressure sensors and feedback loops. He never lived to see his vindication, never knew that the entire world would hold his innovations in their hands every day. But he knew something would come of it. Knew it enough to leave his life's work to the one person who might wait for the world to catch up. Enjoy your stupid papers, they'd laughed. I do, every day with every device sold, with every royalty check, with every inventor the grant helps, I enjoy them. Turns out the only stupid thing was assuming value is always visible on the surface. Dad knew better. He left the obvious wealth to those who could only see the obvious. And he left the future to the one who believed in things that hadn't happened yet. The latest royalty statement sits on my desk. $12.7 million for the quarter. Not bad for stupid papers. Not bad at all.